Shopping locally means more than just going into a brick and mortar store. When you shop in downtown Edenton, that dollar that paid for your prescription pays for a granddaughter's ballet lessons. That same dollar then goes on to buy your new favorite blouse. Followed by an anniversary gift. When you shop at local businesses, your dollar never leaves home, supporting your friends, your neighbors, and your family. Keep your dollar in downtown Edenton.
Town Council Committee meeting agenda for tonight. Copies are in the back if you don't have one already. And tonight we'll hear from three of our four committees: Public Works, Administrative, and Utilities. So we will begin with the Public Works Committee, and that's chaired by Councilman Stallings. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We only have that one item on our agenda tonight. It is the update for the request of the lower speed limit on North Granville Street. We've had some citizens that are interested in getting that speed limit reduced there. We had the police department put the signs out there, and I'm gonna ask Anne Marie if she will to update us on that and bring us.
Sure.
Tell
Okay.
us where we need to be on that.
Chief is going to give just a quick summary of the work that the police department has done, and we have shared our work with North Carolina Department of Transportation, and Chief will tell you about that. Chief?
Good afternoon, Council Mayor. Like Ms. Anne Marie said, I borrowed the speed sign from Elizabeth City Police Department. Speed sign was facing on North Granville. If you're coming down Queen Street and you turn left on Granville and you're headed towards Virginia Road, it captured all the speed going that way. Of course, I don't know if council had a chance to look at it, but it lights up real bright and has a little blue flashing light.
Right.
So it keeps everybody honest. When they're coming down Granville Street. So I recommend the council, based on what we received, that you go ahead and do a DOT study, because DOT lays out those little strips across the road, and most people are not going to pay it in mind, and they're going to drive with a normal behavior versus seeing that sign light up and then kind of slowing down and obeying the speed limit.
Right.
So, but that's my recommendation to the council. We have collected some stuff, Ms. Anne Marie has shared it with DOT, and I recommend that you get a true study and a true speed. I don't want to give council any bad data.
Right, right. And please understand that DOT has the final say on that, whether or not we can decrease the speed limit or not. DOT has that final say as to whether we can or not. And if you want to go into that deeper, or?
Sure, because North Granville is maintained by DOT, they would have the final authority. They have started their work. They did a field investigation earlier last week, and they thought they could have a report for you within 2 weeks. So unfortunately, you won't be able to take any action tonight, but I think Chief's recommendation is spot on. I've had some of my friends say when they see those signs, they speed up to see how fast they can get the mileage to increase. But I think most people tend to slow down, and this way we'll get an accurate reading. And I was talking with one of the gentlemen that lives on North Granville Street earlier, and he has observed 18-wheelers speeding, so we were gonna ask him to share his observations with DOT as well.
Is there a weight limit on that street? Can an 18-wheeler use that street within the?
It used to be
It
posted.
used to be posted right there
Yes,
at the corner
yeah.
of.
We'll check on that, Mayor, and see. And that's something we can work with DMV on, because they would enforce
I
that.
believe Joan said that he was delivering to a store down there. Did I misunderstand that?
One of the trucks that comes in.
One of the trucks
delivers to the store, he normally comes around, parks and walks back to the store. But today, this truck, actually just today, I don't know how far he came, but 40, 50 miles an hour. And there's traffic everywhere, bro. About 3:30, 4 o'clock that was.
I've seen a Dollar General truck coming down to deliver to Dollar General.
I hope we do everything we do to lower speeds everywhere. I mean, I think this is a great first start.
I think we should go ahead and make the street from Queen Street to Virginia Road 25, not just part of it.
And that may very well be the recommendation. You know, it widens after Carteret Street, and there's parking permitted on at least 2 blocks, on-street parking. And DOT and, you know, a lot of the traffic planners say that that helps calm the speed limit. But I'm sure that's an area that DOT will look at as well.
Any more comments?
We'll hear something at next council meeting.
I hope you'll have something by December 11th. I'll stay in touch with Roger and let him know, and share the information with him as well, so you can disseminate it.
Did you like your Christmas gift?
Maybe.
And maybe they could recommend any other speed calming ideas too.
Techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we have.
Okay, thanks. Did you get the, check into the weight limit on your list?
Yes, I will do
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Because we can post that, and that takes speed out of the equation. You know, ticking them for weight violation, right? Okay, next we will have an administrative committee, and that'll be chaired by Councilman Biggs, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is updating the boarding housing, nuisance, and minimum housing code enforcement. And it's my understanding, Anne Marie, I guess you're going to start and then pass off to the building inspector. And
I'm going to start, and then if you have questions, Holly's here to answer any questions. But the police chief is going to make a short presentation of the follow-up that was done by the police department in response to the complaints that were expressed by the neighbors at your last committee meeting.
so who's going first?
Me.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We wanted to report to the council that, we obtained a copy of the Raleigh ordinance that has regulations, has a registration and licensing program for boarding houses. And we sent that to our town attorney, along with the questions that you all raised that night at the meeting. One, could there be some sort of 3 strikes and you're out rule in terms of violations? How do we handle the fact that in our zoning ordinance, technically boarding houses are not permitted, and therefore the existing boarding houses that were allowed before the ordinance was changed are considered non-conforming? Could you establish regulations for a non-conforming situation? And you all received a copy of the attorney's memo. It was a lot to digest and a lot to absorb, and we think it would be appropriate to invite Hood or Ben to come to a meeting to talk to you about it. But I guess the main takeaway, one, is that, and you all are familiar with this Supreme Court decision a few years ago that basically says just because a use is not listed in your use table does not mean that it's not allowed. So there is a recommendation that you amend the ordinance and look at where, in what zones would you allow boarding houses. So by chance, you know, since at the last meeting you approved the professional services agreement with Dale Holland, the consultant who helps you with the UDO, he's coming for our kickoff meeting Thursday. So we will add this issue to his agenda and ask him for help with that. In terms of the code enforcement of the existing structures, Holly has started the inspection processes for 3 of the boarding houses that petitions have been submitted. There was a little confusion over an address with a property where there's a boarding house and a separate single-family dwelling, and the petition actually cited the single-family dwelling unit. So Holly asked told the property owner, look, you might as well go ahead and schedule an inspection because the residents will just sign another petition. But you do have an appointment scheduled this
I
week.
did the little house already, and we're gonna schedule the other one first, I guess sometime this week is what I'm hoping. The third one, I hadn't had any reply on that one yet. So I'm hoping.
And
He had 15 days from the
15
Friday I
days.
sent it out.
Okay. And then we did have, the police chief reported a violation of the house at 215 East Church Street, the one that was just brought back into conformance. And Holly initiated that inspection, and it was a minor, non-life-threatening violation. And the property owner agreed to allow Holly to look at it, and she agreed to fix it. And Holly has set a timetable and will monitor, make sure that is enforced. And then following up with the issues that were raised by the neighbors about nuisances around the neighborhood, we asked the police chief to do some monitoring, and Chief's gonna give a short presentation on what he found and what his follow-up has been.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council. I'm going to pass out something for everybody to be able to take a look at, and I'll refer to it as I'm going through my PowerPoint. Like Ms. Amaria alluded to, I was able to find what we could do as far as the law is concerned about nuisance abatement. If you look at paragraph 4, that I got highlighted, you'll see the word in partnership with the North Carolina AOE or SPI, they combine. There's a chapter 19 statute that allows us to be able to go after these particular places based on nuisance abatement. And behind the next page is the actual general statute. And you see I got highlighted knowing some of the key things is making sure that the homeowners or the landlords actually have knowledge. Typically, sometimes we respond to these places and we take a police report, but we don't ever call the homeowner and say, hey, we just left the property. We just had this incident, just want to make you aware. And I'll go into some of the things I'm looking for or looking at. Okay, if you recall, on October 22nd, we had received 2 complaints at the council meeting about 215 East Church Street, prostitution and drugs around about the first of the month, is what the citizens said. And also 105 South Oakland Street was possible prostitution, heavy foot traffic, and heavy vehicle traffic at both these 2 locations. That was the 2 complaints that came in that day. All right, 215 East Church Street. If you're not familiar, we cut the lights off so you can see the home, what the property looks like. This is actually the home. We were able to get a picture of the house. What I discovered was, right after council, I conducted 5 hours of surveillance at this location on the 23rd, and lo and behold, I saw a young man who actually was buying marijuana. He called somebody. I didn't know he called somebody. But he called someone, a car pulled up in the driveway, he came out of the boarding house, he went to the back rear side of the passenger door, opened the passenger door, leaned inside the car for about 2 or 3 seconds, got back out and went back into the house. So what I did, I called some of the officers and we did what we just call a knock and talk. And I pretty much approached the young man and asked him what the drug was, and he pretty much gave over the marijuana, gave us consent to search the house. That's why I discovered the minor code violation. He admitted that he uses marijuana. He was just buying some marijuana just to smoke. And we dealt with him. And I called Mrs. McLean, Doris McLean, the landlord. I notified her of her tenant. And by notifying her of her tenant, she actually evicted this young man. And as you can see later on, I continued surveillance on the 24th, the 25th, 26th, the 27th. Total about 15 hours to myself. After that day, I reserved no more criminal or nuisance activities. And also, Captain Brown and some other staff also covered the night shift between 3 p.m. and 1 in the morning, and they didn't observe any more criminal activities. So maybe that one young man was our problem at 215 East Church Street. We shall see. Looking at the overview of 215 East Church Street, that was from 2017 to today's date, we've only had 10 calls for service at 215 East Church Street and 4 calls for service in 2018. Incident reports, we had 4 that was written where police officers had to go there and respond and write a police report for whatever crime it may be, whether a victim or suspect, and then 1 in 2018, which was the drug arrest. And then the rest was made back in 2000, one was made back in 2017, that stemmed from the homicide that happened there. 105 South Oakland Street, the other home that came into play from the complaint. Surveillance, with several hours done over there, and I'll be honest with you, on that street was kind of tight. I think Councilman Biggs and his wife come through one day, I think they made me just sitting over there, sitting over there watching the house, because I think either him or his wife waved at me. But again, I didn't see a lot of traffic coming in and out. I saw the 2 homeowners and going to work in the morning, getting off in the morning. And again, Captain Brown and some of my staff also conducted surveillance. And I just didn't see the heavy foot traffic. The most traffic I saw was Halloween night, where some people that live at 510 Oakland Street happened to visit at this residence, but nothing illegal or any criminal nuisance or activities going on at this residence. And I actually followed up with the complainant, and he said that he's noticed that things had changed since the last council meeting. So based on pulling the data, because I love data, there were 11 incidents in 2017, and there was 1 incident in 2018 at that residence. So I'm believe on my bias kicks in. It might have been some of the issues that you might have been having. Might have been around about November, December of 2017 into the new year, and that's where the data matches up with in call for service to what he was seeing. And of course, there was only arrests made in 2015 and 2 in 2014 at that particular residence. Plan of action. What I shared with you is we have in our computer system, our Southern software, we have an officer activity log. And what I have required from our officers to do to be able to put all this data that we're receiving, all the information that we're getting from these calls for service, from the citizens, put it all into our computer system, one computer system. And that way, when we have a complaint of a property, the officers can enter that information into our computer system, just like you see here, put all the information from the victim, the complainant, the accused, offenders, anybody who's actually on scene, they can document all of that. You know, they can put that person's name in there. If they're in our system, it automatically populate. They can verify the date of birth, put it all in there. And at the end of the day, this is what it looks like. So now I can sit down with these landlords and say, hey, this is what we have in our system. We're showing that we've been to your property 100 times in 1 month. This is who we're dealing with. These are the names of people that when officers respond to your property or on your property. You tell me they don't live here, but look who my officers are encountering on your property. Now, by working with them, and in my next slide, by collecting the data, collecting proper information from the nuisance abatements, continue monitoring both locations, continue community engagement, calling up and following up with the citizens that complain, but constant communication with the landlord to work with them. I believe that with these landlords, every time that we respond to their property, we call them that night, if they'll answer the phone, of course, or by the next day, and we note that in our system, on our reports. That way now they have knowledge of what's going on, and they can't say that they didn't have knowledge. And it kind of meets this criteria that I'm looking for to chapter 19. We can get the LE involved, we can get the state involved, and the good thing about it is, all we have to do with the town is provide them the data. They do all the work. They bring on the lawyers, they bring in all the people. All we got to do is provide good data and good information and give it to the SBI, and they'll take care of it from there if it meets that criteria. But that is my plan, to constantly communicate with the landlords and to give Ms. McLean some accolades. She did put the young man out. He was on EIC. She put him out, and this past Friday was his last day on her property. So some landlords, but you have to tell them up front, I believe, that we want to work with you, but we're going to call you every time we have a problem at your property. And we're going to note it. So now we both know. So do I have any questions for council at this time? That's a good thing.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate that report. Am I mistaken here, and Elizabeth, you might have to help me with this. Right now, we don't have an ordinance for for boarding houses, correct?
We have minimum housing code requirements in our town code, but no zoning regulations.
Okay. And is there anywhere in there that it states so that the owner has to also occupy the house for it to be a boarding house? For it to fall under boarding house?
No, we don't have that in our definition. The only place we define boarding house is in this code.
Right.
And it's primarily talking about unrelated people living in a dwelling, renting the different living units, and sharing a common space. But it doesn't have any regulation on an owner having to occupy the premises.
Maybe when we upgrade our UDO,
I see Mr. Holland coming in and helping us with that.
maybe we could put that in there.
But wouldn't you be interfering with people's private rights to own homes and to lease them out? Suppose someone has 3 or 4 houses that they're doing like that. There's nowhere in the world that they can live in all 4 houses.
Well, I'm talking about just strictly boarding houses, that if they want to rent the house to a single family.
But I'm talking about boarding houses.
Right.
Some folks has got more than 2 boarding houses, 3 boarding houses.
Are you
They
talking
can't
about
require
the
them to live in them.
Well, we're not having applications for additional boarding houses. All we're dealing with is the ones that are, and this is a
Right.
question,
Right.
all the ones we're dealing with is the ones that are grandfathered, am I?
That's correct, because we've operated under the assumption that they're not permitted. And we've had boarding houses to start up over the last, 6 or 7 years, and we told them, no, that's a zoning violation because they're not permitted.
Right.
But now, since the state Supreme Court decision, that has changed. So we're going to have to amend the UDO. And, zoning is one thing, and then the town code is another. And the regulations of requiring an owner-occupied boarding house, that's probably gonna be something that would come under the town code. But then how can you require those pre-existing non-conforming to comply? So you've got a lot of policy decisions that you're
Well,
gonna have to make.
I thought the lawyer's comments were that as far as living in the house,
It's
We can't-
forget
unconstitutional.
about it.
We can't do
You
that.
can't do it. You can have
Yeah,
a
that's right.
requirement for a
Yeah.
resident manager, but you can't require that the building owner be that
Right, because
on-site
that goes
person.
to Councilman Bond, so you
Yeah.
running a business.
That was clearly
Yeah.
stated, this memo, yeah.
Yeah. And, there was another thing.
And you're running into the Airbnb stuff too, I think.
Yeah, that's,
Because, that's exactly what an Airbnb is too.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes, sir.
Elizabeth, and Holly for that matter, what I read about in here relative to amortization on these properties, is that a practice that's worth looking into?
it's interesting, it certainly
Yeah.
seems interesting. Mr. Gallup, when he and I talked on the phone prior to him writing the memo, he indicated that if we were to pursue that, he felt that we would also need to have some sort of study done on the economic impact of that
Right, yeah,
amortization. so that we would know the time period that would be appropriate, because it is gonna, impact their livelihood. And that is gonna be an expense, that study, that we would have to do. But it's worked in the past with signs. Now, signs are, nobody's living on a sign, so it's a slightly different, animal, but it's been done successfully with that. So it's
And
an
it also stated in there too, that anything that looks like an attempt to run them out of business. forget about
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
That goes to property rights.
I'm glad to see these landlords who know now that the chief is monitoring these
Yeah,
certain
I think
locations,
that's
and I
part-
I certainly appreciate that, chief.
Anything else?
No.
Everybody good?
Good.
All right, we shall move on to item number 2 then, the economic impact study for Johnny Holmes High School. Anne Marie and the mayor and I had a conversation about this quite a while back. There's movement afoot, I guess, that there's some people that want to build a new high school out in the county, and certainly serving on this board, and we'd like to see the high school remain here in town. So Anne Marie wanted to talk to us tonight about proposals from consultants and how we handle doing this economic impact study. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. We reached out to I guess it's an organization within NC State, North Carolina State University, that specializes in providing research for schools, and they mainly focused on transportation and economic development work. And we had a conference call, Elizabeth, myself, and Jennifer Harris, the Destination Downtown, and the team was really excited about the possibility of doing this study for the town. And we told them that we thought that the council was interested in learning what the economic contributions, the economic value, economic output of having the high school in our downtown is. And so they put together a proposal for you to consider. It's would cost approximately $25,000. That's a lot of money to spend, but they come highly recommended, highly credentialed, and we think that you are going to have to make a very persuasive case to the county commissioners. Ultimately, they're the ones who make the decision about whether or not the school, if they're going to appropriate funds to keep the school, renovate the school, build a new school at the existing site, or build a new site up in the county. So we need to have data, and the other important data that we need to have is regarding safety, because I talked to Dr. Jackson. I let him know that I was going to be presenting this economic impact study to the council, and he appreciated the heads up, and he said, if I were you, I would focus on the safety issues. And that there was an issue about 3 years ago, a situation where there was a shots fired incident after school while student athletes were outside. So we're beginning to put data together. I'm happy that the new chief loves data, because we did a lot of work on data and safety when you all were making the decision to cite the new police department. And I think we can show dramatic decreases in calls for service in the areas around the school since the police department has relocated since you abated the nuisance of the convenience store, and since you have been working so diligently implementing the redevelopment plan in that area. So with that, I would just like to recommend that you give serious consideration to the economic impact study. I also will tell you that Destination Downtown Edenton is very concerned about the notion of the school leaving. They have committed financial resources to bring a urban planning expert who talks to communities and community groups about the importance of planning and keeping schools within the confines of an urban area. And he is already scheduled to come, I believe it's Monday, January 14th. He's going to speak at a public meeting. The public will be invited. And we have also asked for an opportunity for him to present to the commissioners and the Board of Ed members, that joint committee that is meeting talking about schools. We also put in your packet a resolution that the Destination Downtown Board has adopted, and maybe you want the council to consider adopting something similar.
I think that's gonna make a big headway with the Board of Commissioners. Will they listen to that seriously?
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
Let's go forward with it.
sounds good to me. I just wanna make sure they take it seriously.
Is there any funds available that we can apply for to help do this study, or is that something we're gonna have to shoulder ourselves?
We're gonna have to identify funding for you within the town budget, and I think we can do that. But unfortunately, I'm not aware of any type of grant that would pay for this.
So what you're saying to be a budget amendment?
Also, though, in my opinion, the Edenton Partnership, whose mission is to preserve and grow our economic base in this community, would probably be a source of funding as well. Because they have, it would be their board's decision. And of course, the board is made up of both town and county representatives, but still, if it has a negative impact on the town of Edenton, once the study's done, that accrues to a negative impact for the county as well, because if the money's not being spent here in town, if the fans and other people who attend events, both in school and in athletics, don't spend time in the community, it'll be felt throughout. So I strongly recommend we do it. It's expensive, but it would not hurt to have that in our file, so to speak.
Would someone make a presentation from the council to the commissioners, or would this particular group here do it themselves? Let's say we go with this consultant, he does a report.
20 grand, they'd do it.
I would think so too.
Yeah.
So y'all good sending that on, that part on, and
Absolutely.
also the resolution?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Anne Marie just reminded me, we were discussing this earlier today. If the council approves at its meeting to follow through with this, she and I had thought that this could be a good project for us, through your authorization to me, to create a citizens committee to help with the whole process. And that would give us some more, a broader profile in the community as well, and would, I think, enhance the seriousness of what I believe this report is going to show. Anyway, so when we think about that, when we get to the point of deciding whether or not to accept the proposal, if you all are inclined, just someone bring that up for authorization, I'll be happy to make some appointments, and you all could help me with that, as we've done in the past. Just call me with recommendations. I don't want a great big committee, but, you know, like we've done before.
You looking at
Be happy
10,
to.
12 people, or is that too big?
to
Too big? Yeah, 7 or 8?
Yeah.
Anne Marie, one quick thing, and it might be here and I missed it. The group that you were talking about out of the state, the NC State, did they give any timelines if we were to find the money and hire them?
I'm trying to remember from our conference call, I don't think it was a long project, Steve. As a matter of fact, they've been kind of jumping at the bit, emailing us, asking if we're gonna move forward.
Yeah.
So Elizabeth, don't you think that they thought it was
Just a few months.
a few
is what I
months?
remember.
Yeah.
It wasn't a long
Okay,
period.
good deal.
And if we do decide, I'm not going to committee, but if we do decide to move forward with it, we need to move forward. We don't need to
Delegate.
around.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, the earliest that, and I know they're in discussions all the time, but the earliest that they could possibly fund a new high school, from what I understand, is like 2023. Is that correct?
It's after 2021. I think you're right, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah. Our understanding is that, you know, the commissioners and the Board of Ed have appointed a joint committee, and
Right.
they have pledged to meet once a month for a year. And they want to try and have, at the end of the year, a sense of direction as to where they're going to build, so that they can begin all of the planning that will be necessary to obtain the financing. So, we don't have a lot of time to influence.
But you have time to gather safety data.
Do we have municipal representation on that committee?
No, we asked, well, DDE asked to be on the board, and they were not appointed. It is a working group of the commissioners and the Board of Ed. However, we are attending the meetings, and a number of people are attending the meetings to observe and learn and watch. And they're talking about, at their next meeting, trying to figure out how they want to obtain public input, and when, at what time is that going to be appropriate in the process.
So they're probably looking at a public meeting in Swain Auditorium that's open by a good crowd.
So everybody's good with that? We will send
Yeah.
both the recommendations to the council and mayor. That will be also added to the agenda, that if it's passed, for you to recommend the committee.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and the one last item we have on our agenda for tonight is cell phone policy. As Anne Marie stated, during our work with the MAPS group, we were made aware of the policy a lot of local governments are using regarding cell phones. A lot of times and I know for the section of government that I work for, they pay us a stipend per month. And again, you don't have to walk around with two phones, number one. Number two, if someone wants to look at my cell phone, as long as it's county business, that's fine. If it's my business, you know, it's blocked off. I don't know what kind of stipend we would want to come up with exactly, because I know phone plans run from here to here. I mean, as everyone knows. And I guess that's something that you have had some
Well,
conversations about with other towns.
we did,
towns.
we looked at Chowan counties, and I'd be curious to know what RT stipend is.
25.
Show-On is $30 a month for a regular cell phone, and then $50 a month if the business dictates the need for data service. So we thought that was reasonable. And we try to estimate, what kind of dollar impact, and I think there are about a dozen, most all the police officers carry separate phones, so they may want to take advantage of this to get rid of carrying two phones. But I think we have maybe 4 or 5 that would take advantage of it, that right now are using personal phones and have kind of said, it's really not fair that I'm spending my money and you're calling me on my phone
Yeah.
for town business.
Was that you?
But, it's been great with us working with the MAPS group and trying to update our different plans and policies. And I think this is one that will, again, send a message of fairness and goodwill to the employees.
I think it's a really good policy, but pass it on to y'all too.
Let's pass it out.
Let's send it on up and buy. I think those numbers probably work well if they've got to have data. $50. It's certainly not unreasonable now. The price of number one, the price of phones. If they're going out and buying an iPhone or something, and then the data that comes with it. That's all we have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Finally, the Utilities Committee will be now chaired by Councilman Bond, please, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. We've got 2 subjects on our agenda for tonight. First one, water shortness response plan. State requires us to have a plan in case of a water shortage, such as a drought or a main line break, something that we can put in place to solve the problem. And every so often, we have to put this plan up for review by the state. And the state has reviewed our plan for this time, and they have approved it. So what I need from us here is to review that plan and to go over it. And by December the 11th meeting, for us to approve that plan. Well, I send it up to the council so we can review it and approve that plan. Do anyone have any questions about it?
I agree. We need to send it to the full council.
Okay. So we want to send that up to the council. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
okay? And no one had any questions, right? Dang, I had Corey to answer questions from. Corey, you got out easy, man.
I can think of something.
No. The second agenda is a recruitment service proposal for the electric director. Ms. Anne Marie, would you take care of that one for me, please?
I will, and as I've shared with the council previously, unfortunately, we have not attracted candidates for our vacant electric director position through our normal recruitment process, which is advertisement in newspapers and then advertisement through the North Carolina League of Municipalities as well as the Electricities network. And so we reached out to a couple firms that specialize in recruitment, and we've received one proposal. Our goal is to get one more proposal for you. I've kind of been disappointed that one firm that specializes in municipal work has not responded to our request for a dialogue. But we'll search out other firms and hopefully have something for you to consider along with this one. We received a proposal from the Nautical Group out of Raleigh. And honestly, when we were setting up the conference call, I didn't have a lot of confidence that they would be able to achieve, our goals to provide good candidates because they were in the private sector. Well, I think because they're in the private sector, after listening to them, they probably will attract, the candidates that we need. They talked to Tammy and I about how they have networks and contacts in different sectors of business, primarily in the Triangle area, but they do work in northeastern, as well as southeastern North Carolina. And they shared with us a recruitment process that they did for a large private water utility, where they were able to recruit highly talented, the caliber of position that we're looking for. Their enthusiasm, their interest, their approach, the way they talked to us about how they would go about trying to find candidates for us was refreshing and impressive. So at this point, Tammy and I are going to do our best to get you another proposal so that you'll have something to compare with. This proposal is about $18,000. The fees generally run a percentage of the salary that you're looking to offer. So anyway, I guess if the committee would agree to go ahead and put this on the agenda, and then we will do our best to make sure you have another proposal to consider as well.
Okay. Everyone agrees?
Just a question, can the North Carolina League of Municipalities be of any help to you on this note?
They run websites and from that standpoint, and honestly, if it were another department, they might help, but they don't have anything to do with electricity. They're like most of us, they don't understand electricity, they depend on electricities to help us, and electricities, they, bless their heart, they're concerned, they want to help us, but we've not gotten referrals from them. I think what you'll see is this group will be able to identify candidates that are, second and third in control at perhaps, Duke or even the co-ops. They might even find some consulting engineers that have done this work, that have left the profession, that may look to come back. So I'm fairly optimistic.